What do you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
Richardson gonna take off and run. He's in there! Touchdown! I-N-D-Y! Outside give to Taylor. Stretching it out. He's at the 5, and he walks in untouched. Jonathan Taylor. Turner wants to do more damage, and he does.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it! Hits it!
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, ready to rock on a Thursday. Thank you all for joining us. Nice day outside. Enjoy it. But wherever you go, whatever you do not forget to take this show along with you. Participation is certainly necessary with you. We'll get you the number and all the means, the ways in which you can check in with this show. And we have a loaded one per usual and stuff to give away. As always, it is going to be an absolute blast. So I was just talking to the guys a little bit, right, about, so Colts camp today, what happened? You know, thumbnail sketch, and what'd you guys think? Anthony Richardson taking all the snaps. Everybody believing Jonathan Taylor's going to look good. So, yeah, it's funny. Like, training camp is like the summer league. Go back to the summer league a week ago, 2 weeks ago. You just don't want to look bad. You don't want to get injured. Two things. Don't look bad and don't get injured. Don't look injured. That goes along with getting injured. But it doesn't really matter what you do. Some will probably take it and say, wow, this is going to be a can't-miss translation to the regular season. But especially around here with the Colts, most likely that's not going to occur. Most likely that's going to be, okay, well, we'll wait and see once things are real. We'll wait and see once things aren't practice scripted. You can seriously equate the summer league to that. You just don't want to look awful, and you don't want to get injured. It's very simple. And then everything else you can just attribute to it being the summer league, or say the same thing about training camp. But it is so important with that in mind. And also, people will tell you, like Rick Venturi tells me this all the time, and I certainly believe him because he was right in the middle of it. How difficult camps used to be, how more prepared teams felt they were going in than you are now because you just don't have the same type of practice regimen at your avail. I mean, you could go over everything. You could get in meetings, get together, do your workouts, all that, but the practice time is so few and far between with the way that it used to be. You really do kind of throw those dice up in the air and see where they land at the beginning of the season. And as I mentioned yesterday, and laughably, I know for a lot of you out there, I don't blame you. But laughably for a lot of you out there, as I mentioned, that week number 1, you can't fail that test. Last check, you failed the test in the final week of the regular season. Last check, you have failed the test in the openers forever. The opening portion of the season has been awful for the Colts. You have to reverse that. And I don't know what it takes. I don't know if it's, a different – it seems like we've heard all the different ways that they're prepping for it compared to the past, haven't we? All the different ways, all the different things. The only thing we haven't talked about, which I brought up, is like an exorcism. And I don't know, you'd have to probably get Peyton Manning and his neck and Jim Irsay and a room full of media back together again and do something like that. Because I think that's when all of this stuff started. Now, obviously, jokingly said, the start of the season, and I know I say this all the time, the start of this season, however, it is important to get off and finally get off to a good start, especially when you're going to see that team in Houston coming in here in week number 1. That's your opportunity. Week number 1 to make sure you tag them with an L. The favorite with most, not USA Today, but with most, that being the Houston Texans. That's how you have to start this. And also you go in And I think unlike any other time, you can go back earlier this week. Mark Vandermeer joined us on Monday. Mike Duraco joined us on Tuesday. You know, Vandermeer, obviously the voice of the Texans. Duraco covers the Jaguars and the AFC South, all talking about how much better this division is going to be. And I know you've been there and done that and you've heard that, and most of the time that hasn't been the case. I do understand that. But let's face it, if you look at these teams going in, and I'm not necessarily talking about the Colts, you can include them, but if you look at these teams going in, that's exactly the conclusion that you would draw. You know, based upon what you saw from Houston a year ago, and even with that gag job of Jacksonville, even with that, the same thing. And then you have a pair of wild cards, a pair of what-ifs, I think, in Tennessee and the Colts. And some people would suggest you're not giving the Colts enough credit. Look what they did a year ago to be on the brink with a backup quarterback in Gardner Minshew. The problem is, a year ago, much like a lot of times we have seen this team gather some success. In the end, they've done what? They've done it to themselves. Look at all these years. Look at all these years. You can say a year ago against Houston, they did it to themselves. That to me, is a major hurdle that this team, this franchise, everybody has to get over. And that used to not be an issue. It was a foregone conclusion. Yeah, you're going to get in here, you're going to win 12, you're going to win 13, win the division, oh, ho, hum. Everybody was worried about the postseason. You know, what happens in the postseason? You know, why does that not bridge the gap? Do you rest guys? Do you play guys? Are they ready? Were they not ready? Jim Caldwell, deer in the headlights, Peyton Manning, not as good at the postseason. Remember all those things? And we thought at the time those were the worst arguments ever, but now I think I would take them in a minute considering where they were then and why we were having the arguments compared to where they have been here and what you're waiting on to finally catch. And believe me, there is nobody. I am out front on all of this going, man, is this ever going to happen? How much longer do you got to wait? Now, in part, there's a good reason why you're having a fan base every year with expectations. And for one, you were told. You were told that by the owner. Jim Irsay said during the Manning era, and then once you made that transition to the Luck era, this level of winning is what you should expect because those of us that have been around forever know what it's like being on the other side. And you know what? A lot of you, for a number of years now, also know what it's like being on the other side. Although on the other side, for us, the older generation, it was a little bit different. It was just kind of funny. It was a joke. Was something that Duke Tomato wrote songs about for the Bob and Tom show. It was a radio talk show host getting up on billboards and guys around here claiming they don't have any sex until the Colts win. I always thought, yeah, you're probably not having any sex anyway. But no, that was the case. It was a different era. And then you saw what it meant to be a winner. That played off the Pacers. The Pacers in the 90s. If you remember that whole evolution, it taught everybody around here that did not have or were in touch with the ABA era what it was like to have a winning team, what it was like to have expectations, what it was like not to have the curtain down in Market Square Arena, having a full house, hosting a playoff game, being favored to win, being talked about on the national level. That's when you found out in the 90s that's what it was like. And you had that glimpse in the 95 season, that comet, if you will. That comet that flew over, that gave you Ted Marchibroda and Jim Harbaugh, and basically 3 weeks in January to where you saw how the other side lived. You only heard stories. What, this postseason? What, winning? Postseason? Nationally televised games? What, tailgating? All of that was a part of it. And then, once you started the Polian Manning era, it was a foregone conclusion, and that was your expectation. You were also told about it. So you had both franchises going into gear. And you no longer had to wait. You had to wait for them to win a Super Bowl. And there was a lot of swinging and missing in the postseason at that time, but you just felt at that moment it was inevitable. And then that was when the whole television blackouts stopped. Remember, they had to sell out the stadium back then to get televised here locally. They had to do, drive-through window ticket sales to try to beat that Thursday late afternoon deadline. A lot of you are not privy to, but man, that was real. It was real until the winning took shape. And what did I tell you? When the winning stopped, it is very easy to say two things. One is, hey, it was a blip on the radar, we'll be back. But once you fall into that rut, it can be difficult to get out. Buffalo went through it. I mean, hell, the Bengals went through it for like 2-3 decades. It's tough. And that, once again, is what we find the Colts doing. And if you want to equate a couple of things, that's what you saw the Pacers do this past year. Same kind of thing. All of a sudden, get up and start winning some games, playing in an exciting style, being coached up different-wise, being coached up by a veteran that bought into this exciting style in which they play. But I'm assuming everybody out there loves it. Now, with the Colts, it's a little bit different. You have a young, very offensive-minded coach going into year number 2 that I think most people believe in. They have a young quarterback that you haven't seen very much, but if you're going to do a video game, I'm not nerdy enough to know. Where's Jimmy and Eddie? Can they tell me? Can you still build players on Madden and stuff like that? If you're going to build a quarterback, I'm assuming, athletically speaking, in everything, every category, you're probably looking at Anthony Richardson. But ultimately, there's more than that. First things first is staying healthy, being out there, being able to lead your team. But it's in winning some games. And that is interesting over the years where you are, and you find yourself living through revisionist history a little bit. And there's history here that old farts like me and some of you out there would rather not still be mired in. Now, even though it was new and it was fresh and you had a team, never had an NFL team before, oh, wow. You're still buying the gear, but hell, nobody was tailgating. Nobody really cared. It was kind of funny when they lost. It just became something you expected. And that's the rut, unfortunately. Whether you're talking about being done to them by faulty decisions, ill-timed decisions, not being right with the team, whatever. Bad guidance, bad decision-making from a general manager, coaches that didn't work. I mean, all of that can be a part of the equation, but all of that has to stop. And I know you're looking for answers here in training camp. You're just not going to find them because, again, there is the quality of this is going out to practice, watching them participate, and then making sure they're healthy enough to start the season. The only thing you don't want to be is bad. You don't want to be hard targeted out by everybody that covers the team every day and say, hey, you know what, this guy's not playing well. Yeah, everything else you don't really get any points for other than staying healthy. That's what you're hoping for, and you get that practice. So I guess all is good with the Colts as of today. And obviously the Anthony Richardson talk, the Jonathan Taylor talk, we'll dive in like we did yesterday to Julian Blackman and the defense and the secondary. I thought he was really good about talking about what he likes about this team, the reason why he returned. And let's face it, too, the reason why he returned is it is a popular term and a phrase right now to use, betting on yourself. Betting on yourself. A lot of people wanted Andrew Nembhard to bet on himself. Andrew Nembhard said, you know what, screw that. I want to get paid right now, and I want to stay someplace that I feel good. I want to stay at a place where I'm comfortable, where I have thrived, where I believe I can grow. The hell with that betting on yourself crap. What the hell do I got to bet on myself about? So that has been a very common phrase, betting on yourself. A lot of people suggested Julian Blackman did that during the offseason, but really he didn't because there were so few options out there. And you talked yesterday about the devalue of his position, of the safety position. And you can really look no further than the Colts. Look no further than that. You can, this is how I look at the secondary of the Colts defensively right now. You can make a case if you want. Chris Ballard said yesterday he's got a lot of young guys in the secondary he wants to see. And let's face it, there are a lot of young guys at corner that you would want to see. But I don't know what you want to see that you haven't really seen a great deal of in the safety position. And like Rick Venturi would completely disagree with me, and I'm certain that he's right. But that's something that's just, to me, drastically different. Now, you could talk about, I think, corner and say, yeah, I want to see all these guys, but you've got basically, Blackman that you trust, who went through the entire season, had a good season, got injured at the tail end. We know that. Wants to play throughout the season and be healthy. That's one of his goals that he mentioned yesterday. But there has been a devaluing of his position. And when you look back, he didn't bet on himself. What he did is he made a smart move. Buffalo had some interest. What San Francisco had interest. But then you'd have to go somewhere and start new. Here, you're comfortable. And if you're going to take a one-year deal and you want to call that betting on yourself, I don't call it that. I think you go with the smart move for you. You stay here with people that you know, you trust, a defense you're a part of. You play off the season that you had a year ago. And you hope that translates into a little bit more of a robust offseason for you. It is not the definition of betting on yourself. It is, I've got to port this ship in this storm here, and this is the best opportunity for me to, in his case, thrive, have something further down the road on the other side of this season. Just feel comfortable in a place. And that was Julian Blackman from yesterday. Yeah, the whole betting on yourself, it's a term that will wear you out. I mentioned that to Jake a little bit earlier about words and phrases that wear me out. Yeah, I hate timeline and draft capital and all that loser mentality crap. I hate that. I hated entertaining losses, another loser mentality phrase. I hate them all. And betting on yourself is another. Julian Blackman didn't bet on himself. This was his best option in a world in the NFL that was not rotten with options for him. On the other hand, Andrew Nembhard had some options to play well and then to become more than likely a restricted free agent. Maybe end up being somebody's point guard someplace else, but it would be anything like what he's experienced so far, what he's accomplished so far, what he's been a part of, where he wants to be, where he feels comfortable. It's right here. Now, the betting on yourself stuff. All right, we can hit that at 239-1070 if you so desire. Curt Cignetti, the new head coach of the Hoosiers, had an interesting press conference. I'm kind of curious. I said this a little bit earlier off the air. It is refreshing to hear somebody talk junk and utilize bravado in a way that you've never heard it with IU football. You've never heard it in that tone, let's face it. At least I haven't. Maybe somebody has. But I've never heard it like that. With that sort of bravado. And I was just kind of curious how IU fans are taking to it, what they like about it. And I think when I said, I hope he lives up to it. And then the counter was, it's going to be impossible for him to live up to it. And then I thought about, yeah, you're right. I hope that he can set the groundwork to live up to at least some of it. Because let's face it, it has really been a ragged at best message. You had 1 year, the COVID year, and LEO and love each other and players running off the field. and hugging the coach and having a great time, and that devolved in a half a second. You want this to be right. You want it to finally be here. And I'm sure to IU football fans, you got to know this. If you're a diehard IU football fan, you're Teflon, because that's a hard gig. It's a hard gig to be that. Like our good friend Bill Benner goes to every game, season tickets, and it has basically, with the exception of one season, been kind of the same. You hope that this one is the start of something different. And what I mean by that is, even if he doesn't live up to, if you're anti the bravado or the strong talk or all that, even if he doesn't live up to that immediately or whatever, if he lives up to anywhere in the neighborhood of how he talks up this program and how you should feel and where it's going, I'm telling you, you should embrace it. I know that ultimately you have to see it done. You have to see it to believe it. You have to see it happen to jump on board. But if you're looking for a message out there, I would have to think, again, with this beaten down IU football program fan base, you would much rather hear that than anything else. Zach Osterman, bottom of the hour, is going to join us. We'll talk about that. IU football, Big Ten conference football, with the addition of all those Pac-12 teams, and we'll get a lot going on with Zach coming up here at the bottom of the hour. Am I doing Phil Steele this week, or is that next week? All right. So I told you that you really know football season is back when Phil Steele comes on the show. So that's next week. That's when you're going to know football is really back. Phil Steele's going to be here. So Phil Steele coming up next week. Mike Chappell's going to join us. We'll talk about the Colts in that practice a little bit earlier today as camp is officially underway. And Nate Atkins of the Star, too, all joining us. A lot of football conversation. I shall sneak in a little bit of basketball, too, because I love what the Pacers are doing. A lot of people have asked me, do you think that this Nembhard deal holds any bearing on an extension for T.J. McConnell? There is no way that Chad Buchanan and Kevin Pritchard do not understand the value of T.J. McConnell and have not planned for this accordingly. Y'all tried to get rid of the dude a year ago, and I sat here saying, you're nuts. You don't know anything about basketball. The hell do you want to do that? And you gave me playing time, and timelines don't match, and just such a high level of nerdery, it made me want to puke. But after this past year, and knowing what you know right now, because you're all basketball genius by now, you are. You were made into basketball genius. In no way in the world there's any effect. You are looking at the team. If it doesn't work out, then I'll have to eat it, and they can do something about it on the fly next year. But their course of action is one in which I truly have enjoyed. Give you more angles as why you should as well. James is over there. What are we giving away today, James?
We have got some State Fair tickets to give away, and then we still have some Bush tickets as well.
Bush tickets to give away. That's Gavin Rossdale. Once upon a time, man, that guy just went, hey, chick, come here. Hey, chick, come here. He was just doing this. Didn't he date, what's her name, Gwen Stefani for a number of years? I believe so. Who's married to Stefani now? Blake Shelton, are they married?
I think so.
Stefani smoke. And she may be even more like when she broke through with No Doubt in the 90s, there was smoke going on there. You could see it was a bit blurry. It was smoketified. But she's even more, she's one of those. It's like Liz Hurley. Like Liz Hurley, whoa. 20s, 30s, 40s. She's more smoked now. I think nearing 60 or in her 60s, close to her 60s than she was then.
She's 54.
Liz Hurley is?
Oh, no, Gwen Stefani is.
Right. 54?
Yeah.
So she's the class of 88, just like me. Who do you think has aged better, me or Gwen Stefani?
I can neither confirm nor deny my opinion.
Who has aged better? Hey, listen. True story, I'm doing all I can here. I am throwing every piece of junk. It's like Major League. I'm throwing every piece of junk I can at him, Skipper. I've got enough for one more. That's me. I'm going to have all, by the time I'm 60, I'm 54 right now, so I got, basically another 5 years and a couple of months to get this thing right. I'm going to have all new parts by the time I'm 60. Remember when, it was 40 was the new, 40 is the new 30 and all that? Like, my 60 is going to be 20. Going to go ahead and take it right back. All new, and I mean everywhere, from top to bottom. Like the $6 million man, except much less value there than Lee Majors in the 70s. All right, quick break. Got that to give away. We've got Zach Osterman going to join us coming up at the bottom of the hour. And who else? Nate Atkins, Mike Chappell. Busy show for you. Sit tight. Stream the app, HD Radio. You got us, AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
He looks like Rascal Flatts guy.
Got a cool soul patch.
He does, and a buttery smooth voice.
Oh, yeah.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, Bill Cash says, JMV, Liz Hurley aged like a fine wine. You age like Bud Ice. Thank you. Let's see. Roughing it once again. He's listening while on the beach. Actually, in the water right there. In the water in Florida. Let's see, man. Thank you for listening. Yeah, Bud Ice. Bud Ice didn't age well. Bud Ice, Miller Lite Ice. Did I age like Red Dog? That's me. Is Ice House still out there, too? I'm assuming Ice House is still out there. The Ices, and especially Ice House, it would get you to where you wanted to go. This is just from college experience and in your 20s experience. It would get you where you wanted to go quicker than most other things. But, man, you had to pay a penalty. Because it was headache city, hangover city the next day. Thank you, Bill, for that. This is from Scott, JMV. I just saw your doppelganger in a Courtyard Marriott in Cincinnati preparing for the Foo Fighters later on tonight. So it wasn't Dave Grohl, is what you're saying, Scott. So, Gritty told me that Flea was Soch number 3 in The Outsiders. Gritty, I didn't know that. I had no idea. Red Hot Chili Peppers later on tonight. I didn't know Flea was Soch number 3. I just knew Kiedis. I thought maybe Flea was in Point Break. I knew Kiedis was in Point Break. He played like a surfing badass. And Kiedis, I think, was in an episode of 2 of Happy Days. Yes. Do you have updates on Flea, James?
Well, he was in The Outsiders. Apparently, Nicolas Cage was also in The Outsiders, which I did not realize.
Well, it's a Francis Ford Coppola movie, right? The Outsiders?
I
Well,
think.
that's his uncle.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I had
Yeah,
no.
his last name was originally Nicholas Coppola.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he went from that, then he did a film, I don't know, less than 10 years ago down in southern Indiana. I think it was called The Autobiography of Swebo. He was the lead role. You didn't know that? True story. So Flea was in The Outsiders?
He was, yes.
I didn't know that either, Gritty. Well done. Andy Moore Automotive Group Hotline. From the Indianapolis Star, covers everything that is IU, the Hoosiers programs down there. Zach Osterman joins us. Hello, Zach. How are you?
Hey, how we doing?
Have you come across, Zach, anybody that's an IU fan that suggests they're not on board with the high-level bravado from the first-year head coach?
No, I don't think so. And, these things always seem to sort of swing back and forth in terms of somehow or another you always land on the personality or the resume or whatever that you didn't have before. But listen, I always kind of say, because people say, what do you make of it? I say, well, when you have 13 level, but, I also understand where the confidence comes from. And I think, too, we live in a time now where you can quantify that excitement in, I think much more sort of tangible ways, not least among them NIL resources and NIL dollars and, the way you can fundraise for that. I know that boosters were engaged in the past, but it's a lot easier to just sort of see, I think, the immediate impact of energy and excitement around the program when suddenly you can tell that a coach has a much bigger bat to swing in the NIL space. And I think that's kind of where Indiana certainly has wound up since Signetti's hiring. And I think that is, kind of probably one of the, dozens of ways that you could sit here and kind of quantify, at least to some extent, the excitement you're talking about that I think has been, Signetti himself will say it's prove it time. I think that's what he called it today. It's time to, prove that it's all worth something on the field. But everything you can do up to that point, I think, has gotten a near universal yes on the approval rating.
Zach, true story here. I've been waiting for somebody with a voice to suggest don't let the doorknob hit you where the good Lord split you with the transfer portal in mind. That didn't bother me at all. I don't mind that at all. I wish it was more prevalent. Seriously, I'm an Indiana State guy. So, hell, everybody in every program and every sport left in the winter and the summer and the spring and whatever. So that when he didn't say it in those words, but basically he was saying, hey, we had some dudes that got in the transfer portal, and we're going to be better off without them. I like that. There's a lot of bravado that I dig, and I certainly like that.
And I think, I don't, as somebody who's obviously covered college athletics for a long time and is, can remember a lot of the debates around, player welfare and, player opportunities and, how much power the athlete should have and all those different sorts of things. I do think that since NIL, and I think this is going to continue with revenue sharing and continue on as revenue sharing comes in whatever form it ultimately takes, there is a little bit more of a feeling of, if athletes want these opportunities to kind of monetize and, and engage with NIL opportunities and, make something akin to a salary, essentially, that they're going to have to be comfortable too with the idea that they're going to be treated a little bit more like professionals. And I know we can have another extensive conversation about should they unionize, should they be allowed to collectively bargain, what do we call them, are they on contracts, are they independent contractors, whatever. But it's more kind of philosophical, this idea that I think more people have sort of accepted or embraced that, if athletes are going to get more of these opportunities, then they need to understand there can be some give and take the other way too, which is if you're going to be compensated for this, in the real world, if you're compensated for something and you don't provide what you need or provide what's expected, then that compensation may go away. And I don't think Cignetti is necessarily going quite that far. I don't think Indiana's pulling NIL deals off the table for people or anything. Most of those things are one-year deals anyway. But it is, again, more philosophically speaking, that mindset of saying, if athletes are going to have more freedom of movement, if they're going to be, rewarded in terms of, opportunities to make money off their likeness. And of course, by extension, that means the way they're performing on the field or on the court or wherever, then they maybe need to be comfortable with the fact that it's going to be a little bit easier for a coach to move them on if he doesn't.
So Zach Osterman, the Star, covers IU sports. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Kurt Cignetti met with the media a little bit earlier today. Zach, of course, was a part of that. What is the number percentage of turnover on this IU roster from year to year here?
So I think the final number, I think, settled somewhere around 37 or 38 new countable players. Now, at one point, they were under 50. And for the moment, anyway, the scholarship limit's 85. That's probably going to change. But for the moment, the scholarship limit's 85. And at one point, they were under 50. Like they were at 47 or 48 at kind of the bottom end of guys going in the portal, new staff, turnover, all that. I think the number settled out at maybe 37. Forgive me, I have not looked at that list in a couple of months. I've been spending a lot of time on the beach. But it is, if you want to think about it in terms of whatever 37 divided by 85 is, it's probably, approaching 40% of your roster in terms of exactly, how many, or maybe even a little bit past 40%, I guess, if I'm trying to do the rough math in my head, in terms of how many new faces there are between transfers and also, obviously, incoming freshmen, because Indiana did still sign a pretty sizable freshman class as well.
What do you think about him living up to just a little bit this season? The expectations. He put them out there. They're lofty. And again, I think that's what this IU fan base that has had to have been Teflon for decades now, I think that's what most of them were ready to hear. But expectations are what, considering what he has said about this opening season and considering what you believe on paper about this first season?
I think in terms of, working backward, I do think this team can go to a bowl. I don't know that I'd necessarily guarantee it, but with 8 home games and a manageable non-conference, you don't face USC, you don't face Oregon, you don't face Penn State, you don't face Michigan or Ohio State until November. I think I said it, but 8 home games. One of my go-to lines all offseason is I think I've memorized the schedule earlier in the offseason than at any point in living memory, and it's because the schedule is such a big piece of how you evaluate this season. Even Cignetti himself said something to the effect when he was up on the podium today of, we've got a good schedule. We've got a schedule that is manageable, is navigable. And I think to kind of the first part of your question, what I find interesting, and I'm writing something about this today, so tomorrow's news today, I guess, but so often when you see first-year coaches come in and they talk about losing culture, winning culture, losing mentality, winning mentality, finding the losing mentality, needing to replace it with the winning mentality. The sort of unspoken, I guess, message is that they're asking for time and that they're saying, I'll need to get, my players in, or I need 2 or 3 years to really establish my my system, my scheme, whatever. Curt Cignetti's message pretty much since day one has been, I've done this before. I've taken over programs where things were bad and we just turn it around and win. And so there's no reason not to expect us to do that here. I think he's probably being tongue in cheek when he gets on the Big Ten Network set in December and says, we're going to be back here for the Big Ten championship game next year. But I don't think it's far away from the way he thinks about just saying, why would we wait to turn it around? Why do we have to wait? He believes in his process. He believes in his staff. He believes in his scheme. And especially with the portal now, allowing, coaches a little bit more freedom to turn over rosters in areas where they might need to really kind of, go get 3-4 guys just to bolster one position. He is inviting it, I guess, is the point, which is unusual for a first-year coach. And maybe it's a little bit a sign of the times and a sign of, again, the ability to rebuild a roster very quickly. But I think it's also him. I think it's also his attitude, his approach, his overall sort of, the way he thinks about the way he does his job is, I've done it before, so why can't I do it here?
Hey, Zach, final thing before I let you go here. Quickly, I'm curious your thoughts on what is the most important position in any sport, anywhere, that is quarterback. What is your prediction? What is your thought on the type of production and expectation that IU fans can get out of that position this year?
Obviously, the first piece of that comes with health, and I say that purely because just think about the last 4 or 5 years for Indiana. When was the last time Indiana had one quarterback play essentially the entire season, completely?
Did you say in Indiana or IU like the entire state could also fall under that category? Yeah, that's
fair. But I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I think it might have been Richard Lego in 2016. Or maybe I guess Peyton Ramsey may have played the whole 2018 season as a starter. That's it. And so there is going to be that element of, can you keep that guy healthy? After that, it's interesting because I don't know how much people have looked into Cignetti's time at James Madison. He had more than one transfer quarterback come in and excel at like an all-conference level. We talked a lot when he was hired about Jordan McLeod, the quarterback he had last year. But McLeod had just transferred into James Madison that season. The guy before him, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was also a transfer and had pretty much immediately sort of, started producing at the same level. You've got a guy in Curtis Rourke who I think probably the best way to describe it is he's got nothing left to prove anywhere but a Big Ten level. He was outstanding for the best part of 3 years at Ohio. He was MAC Offensive Player of the Year in 2022. Can he do it at the Big Ten level? We'll find out. But he certainly doesn't have anything left to prove below, the Power 4 level, the high major level, whatever term you want to use. If you can keep him healthy, then I think Indiana can have a pretty productive year at quarterback. If you can't, and again, this has been the issue for IU teams in the recent past, then the question becomes, how far has Taven Jackson come along? Or is there a young player like Tyler Cherry who can step into that job later in the season and do something productive with it? But Cignetti's track record with quarterbacks, and he brought almost his entire offensive staff with him, and it is his offense. He'll tell you that. He'll say, I tend to be pretty hands-off about defense, but the offense is mine. He was an offensive coach. He played quarterback, and then he was an offensive assistant his entire career before he became a head coach. That is his system, and it has produced quickly with transfer guys before. So I don't think it's necessarily something where, Indiana's going to look at it and say there's just no way they can do that this year.
So Zach Osterman covers IU sports for the Star. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Hope you had a great off-season, great summer, vacation at the beach, and now you understand it's all over and it's time to go back to work, man. But we'll check in, especially when we form a little bit more of an educated opinion about what we're going to see. We'll check back in again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, as always.
You got it, man. Thanks, Zach. Zach's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We'll take a quick one, come back. State Fair tickets, Bush tickets. That's Gavin Rossdale in Bush tickets coming up too. Nate Atkins, Mike Chappell, and a lot more. I want you to sit tight because we're coming back with you next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
A Ride with JMV.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
At Chili Peppers tonight at Ruoff Home Mortgage Music Center. Go up there, hang out in the AAA membership lounge a little bit. If you're going, let me know, and I'll look you up. Or better yet, you can just come to the AAA membership lounge and look me up. So later on tonight at Ruoff, there has been history in Major League Baseball today. Dylan Cease, a no-hitter for the San Diego Padres. San Diego. And those, you're thinking few and far between any longer because of the way the pitchers are utilized and pulled so quickly. But a little bit of Major League Baseball history. There's not a damn thing wrong with that. I dig it. Earlier today in San Diego. That, by the way, was against the Washington Nationals, which swept the Reds over the weekend. Hey, the Reds got one back, actually a couple back, and then the Braves said, oh, it's supposed to rain, so let's not go back out and play that next game. What's up with that? Can't get my team on a bit of a run and then pull the rug out from under them. Come on. Stuff to give away. Tomorrow shows on the road in Broad Ripple at Average Joe's. Hope to see you there. That's a tavern tour stop, and the show is going to be absolutely loaded. Average Joe's, Broad Ripple. Brent Halverson is back. It's been a while. Romy will be there. I believe both Gina and Lindsay from 13 will show up. Going to have a load of folks there tomorrow. Can't wait to see you. Average Joe's and Broad Ripple Tavern Tour Stop with Heaven Hill Distillery. That's coming up tomorrow. Nate Atkins on the other side. Colts practice earlier today. Camp is officially underway. We'll go over that with him and Mike Chappell after 5 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Remember, mum is the word.
Certainly, but
Mum.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hour 2, you guys are fantastic so far. AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live. Thank you for joining us. Mike Chappell coming up after 5. We got tickets to give away. State Fair, concert-wise, so be ready there. Get inside and mingle a little bit, if you will. The AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live. Tomorrow, we're going to be on the road in Broad Ripple at Average Joe's. I cannot wait to see everybody there. It's a tavern tour stop for the month of July. Average Joe's in Broad Ripple coming up tomorrow. I did want to mention this, too, for later on tonight, because I'm a big fan. Big Roscoe and the Hammers in Bargersville tonight. It is Bargersville Parks and Recreation, the 2024 free concert series. In Bargersville, you're lucky tonight, man. Big Roscoe and the Hammers, awesome. It's a hell of a fun time. That's in downtown Bargersville later on this evening. So if you're in and around the area, go check it out. Shout out to Rob, as always. Zach Osterman a little bit earlier. Kurt Signetti, the bravado in the talk regarding your number one with the Hoosier football program. Yeah, that and more with Zach. Podcast 1075, thefan.com. As I mentioned yesterday, too, Julian Blackman joined us. Just a really good conversation about all that went down for his offseason. Some also in-season stuff because he was really good a year ago. Then final game of the season, obviously injured, had that shoulder situation, but a really good season and a one-year deal to come back. But very eventful, if you will, and a lot of good stuff happening in his offseason. Julian Blackman with that podcast at 1075thefan.com. Meantime, of the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from the Indianapolis Star, our friend Nate Atkins joins us now. Hello, Nate. How are you?
Doing well. Day one of training camp. It's here again, but this has been a fun start. We're able to here just watch football and not ask all about any players holding out or anything like that. So it's refreshing. I'm happy to be here.
It does seem very, and this is the way that you want it. I said this earlier, uneventful. I mean, hell, we're talking about day number one. But considering what Colts fans and those that cover the Colts have had to go through over the years, I mean, this is one that you could describe to this point, and you hope that it remains this way humdrum, right? That's the way that you want it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, you're watching football practice and everything is about football questions, on-field questions. This is starting to, I mean, it is early. It's been one day. And we know with this franchise, things can tilt quite quickly. But right now it has the feel that, like, Shane Steichen's personality is the identity of this whole thing, which is put your head down and go to work on intense levels of football preparation. So everything that you would talk about right now, whether it's excitement or concerns or fears, it's all football related. It's all about, how explosive can Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor be together? How do you keep them, high volume but healthy? Do they have enough in the secondary? Who's going to start at free safety? It's all on the field football questions, which is very different than talking about, contract holdouts or injury situations, things that you feared. We know when Jonathan Taylor signed, we were through that contract situation, but, Michael Pittman Jr. was a free agent. Well, they got that deal done, even though he was on the franchise tag. And then, of course, we wanted to get to this point with Anthony Richardson and not be talking about him not being on the field or dealing with an injury. And right now, again, you knock on wood, because it's been one day, but he feels like he's through that entire shoulder issue, the previous one. Doesn't mean there won't be a new one, and as we hope not to see. But right now, they're just focused on football, building the best version of him, the best version of this team. And it's a team that expects to go to the playoffs this year. And I think now that they're in this spot of getting done with all the drama and just being on-field questions, I think that's a very fair expectation to have.
Yeah, that's an opening statement. I do want to get into a great deal with you, Nate, in just a second, play off of what you just said. However, it is kind of interesting. I mentioned on my way in, a colleague of yours, Zach Osterman, joined me, and we talked about the verbal bravado of Kurt Cignetti in year number one at IU. And I'm kind of curious, all quarterbacks have to have this level of confidence / bravado that's stratospheric. Let's just mention that's the way it is, because you have to be that successful at a high level, have that type of ego and confidence. Where does that lie so far from what you've seen within Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, it's interesting because the first time I ever got to see or talk to Anthony was at the Combine a year ago, and honestly, in that moment, it felt a little over the top. I mean, he was really, really confident in talking about comparing himself to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and Tom Brady and all. And that's kind of been a roller coaster because he dialed that back for a bit, and then we're trying to find, they've been trying to find a way to get him to kind of understand, like, living in his, self-belief that is still grounded in that hard work and the desire to get there. And ever since sort of he got here, I think once he got through that, he got drafted, and this was no longer such a dream that just popped out of the sky in his life. It was his reality. He's shown a lot of that. But there's still been challenges along the way because, there was the injury, and there was the way that crept into the narratives of, can he stay healthy? Is his playing style? Is it safe? Is it smart enough when he's out there on the run? But one thing that's very interesting to me that I've started to notice with him, I saw it in practice today, and I remember thinking about this in the Rams game, is that when he's at his best, it's when he is playing a bit cocky, not reckless, not forcing things, not lowering his shoulder when he doesn't need to, but in terms of playing in that sort of free-flowing, scrambling way where he's moving through progressions fast, and he's just trying to get to explosive plays. I thought when he started out last year in the first game, it was almost like he had such a checklist of all these things he needed to do mechanically to be that type of passer, and he was playing kind of robotic, and it was a bit how he played, a story he loves to share, from when he was at Florida, and a ton of scouts came out to watch him versus Will Levis, and all he wanted to do was show off that he had all these mechanics and he could look like Tom Brady, and it went terribly. It was the worst game he's probably ever played. I'd say the best game he's ever played, the best game I've ever seen him play was that Rams game, but it was only when he went down 23-0, and they had to throw out the script and any of that other stuff and just go make a play. And when he plays in that sort of bucket-getting mentality, he can be really, really electric. And so that's when he, if you don't know him, it can come off a little, maybe a little arrogant when he says things like, I know my legs are my superpower. But he's almost saying that more to himself than anybody else. Is he's trying to get himself to believe, like, you have all these tools at your disposal that most humans are not blessed with, and you've got to know that and feel confident in it all the time. And if you watch him throw right now, when he's making decisions early as far as whether to bail on a pocket, move around, and get moving laterally to the line of scrimmage and looking down the field, he plays really, really well. When he's standing flat-footed and time's ticking and it's like there's someone else's voice in his head, it just says, hey, it's time to throw the ball, that's when he's mechanical, robotic, and it's not who he naturally is. So I really have been fascinated just to watch him build on that confidence, which has always been pretty high, but now it's being channeled in terms of, like, he's trying to build that confidence not to brag and show everybody else, but to show himself and always remember just, like, what makes him different, what makes him special, and how to tap into that all the time.
I wouldn't know because I'm unathletic, but I'm assuming that most, especially exceptionally athletic athletes out there, will have that confidence in what they do, with the athleticism. Always have that confidence. And playing that position, you got to have a level of confidence and ego anyway. But I want to know, where's his confidence on last year just kind of being, 1 year in mini to where he didn't have availability. So where's his confidence in remaining available? I think I would start that before I even get into a conversation regarding anything else. Where's that in his head?
So I take it back to, we had a lot of conversations right before the injury about that exact thing. Because if you remember, he had the brain injury where he didn't run quite fast enough against the Texans to finish that play. There were a couple other moments where he just was inviting some hits. And so there was that ongoing conversation, and he did recognize at that point he needed to dial in a little bit more on some of these details. And he was starting to show that, though, against the Rams, and even that early on in that Titans game, he was sliding. He was stepping out of bounds. He was not really doing anything reckless, and then got hurt anyway. And so you wondered, does that make it even worse, the fact that he did take these right steps, got hurt anyway on a pretty routine run? But for him, the way that he ultimately channeled it, and I think it's the right way, is that there are some things that are just going to happen in this violent game that are kind of fluky. And it doesn't mean that is the end-all, be-all of something. I remember, I used to cover the Lions, and before I got there, I covered sort of the tail end of Matthew Stafford's career. But his first 2 years, he missed 19 games to injury, and it was a very similar conversation of he wanted to truck guys. He wanted to dive for the first. He was not slating, and he went through all these injuries, and it was big conversation with that. Later on, he started 136 games in a row because he didn't force himself to live in those fears. So I think what bothered Anthony and why he was really in a down state after the injury was not just losing football, but it was losing his ability to answer the critics who did bring that up. And I think he would much rather you criticize his accuracy and the completion percentage in that conversation, because to him, he was out there on the field able to answer that, or at least attack it, try to get better. When he wasn't able to be out there on the field, he can't answer that big question that's out there about, can you be available enough? But as he's processed it, he's gotten distance from that hit. He has really tried to understand this as I was doing the right thing. That one injury, the big injury, was the one that was fluky. That was not anybody's fault, but it can happen to anybody. It's a matter of getting back out here and just moving on from that. And really, if you think about it, it's weird. He's had this injury conversation kind of every year of his career, but he's only had one long-term injury since high school. Now, he had one his senior year that was similar, another AC joint sprain, and he hasn't played a ton. So we don't know. We're not going to know the answer to, can he be available? Is he a durable player? At least until we see this year play out. But the sense I get from him with that confidence is that he's not allowing himself to believe that he's not that yet. There's no evidence for it beyond kind of fears that I just think a lot of, as we talk about sports, there's always a conversation about injury prone. It feels like people think this is a lot more predictive than it is. And that's why I go to that Matthew Stafford example of if it was so predictive, then Stafford would have been a bust by year 2. And that guy ended up being the ultimate Iron Man, where only Matt Ryan had a longer streak of consecutive starts at the time his finally broke. He was the model for being on the field. And it can flip like that because this is a violent game, and sometimes things are just really unpredictable when it comes to health.
He is Nate Atkins of the Star, covers the Colts. First day of practice at camp in Westfield earlier today. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I mentioned on your way in here that Julian Blackman joined me yesterday, and we got into a bit of a conversation about how devalued his position, really safeties in general, but especially his position is. And he's got a one-year deal moving forward here, coming off a really good season up until the end where he is injured in that final week of the regular season. But I look at the safety position, and I know that Chris Ballard had mentioned yesterday that he wanted to see some young players in the Colts secondary. And if you look at the cornerback position, I think you could argue that, okay, but don't we know already a lot about safety and understand that it probably does need some help and are wondering why they haven't given it another veteran shot, if you will, of that sort of help?
Yeah, that's just very interesting. I've been thinking about that really all offseason. And then yesterday, the way Chris Ballard talked about it made me think this more, is that if you look at everything they've said and done at those two positions, they've been pretty different. Even though they're two young positions, it's all secondary. They do believe in their outside corners, in Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, Dallas Flowers. They've given those guys every opportunity to get on the field outside of, they kind of brought Juju along slowly to start last year because he missed practice. But ever since the moment where they started playing him, they gave them every opportunity to play. There were some injuries with Juju that were hard to read, obviously Dallas. So we don't have the full answer. They may be wrong on it, but they fully do believe that, those guys, especially Juju, Brents, and Jalen Jones, are very talented young players who are going to get better. That is not how they talk about the safety position. They do believe in Julian Blackman. They know he had a great year. What they're kind of waiting to see is, can he do it again? Can he stay on the field? He's had some injury conversations, but the free safety spot, they've told us at different points in time they don't believe in either guy. Nick Cross or Rodney Thomas, they've both been benched. Nick Cross has started 4 games in 2 years and has really had no injuries in that span. And so you wonder why have they let this happen? And I think it's just they want to give the chance for Nick Cross to kind of to make this a camp where he takes it by storm, where it's not being handed to him. There's an opportunity there. There's nothing blocking him, but he's got to get going right now. This has to happen now because this team's trying to make the playoffs. They've got a pretty set defense. We'll see how cornerback goes, but almost every other position outside corner is set. It's feeling good, but if they don't get the free safety spot down, none of it's going to matter. The quarterbacks they got to face this year, whether it's Josh Allen and C.J. Stroud and Trevor Lawrence and Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, it's a much tougher slate than a year ago. And if you don't have a free safety, especially when you have young corners, that's going to become the problem. You can get by with some of the youth and inconsistency that's going to come at outside corner if your safeties are really solid. You can't have problems at both of those areas and think that that's going to work. And so the answer, what Chris Ballard said yesterday, he's the one who offered up that they could definitely make a move at free safety, which is the opposite of what he said at wide receiver. He didn't say about any other position. And what's interesting at free safety is that's where there are 2 Pro Bowlers on the market, Justin Simmons and Quandre Diggs. So I'm not at all making a prediction or saying that they will sign them, but I can confidently say they're monitoring it, and that's some of the messaging they're trying to put out there to both of them, Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas, who has a shot too if Nick Cross isn't getting together. But it's like, hey, there's a big opportunity for you guys, but if you don't, you're not just going to be given this position and roll into the year and see how it goes. You got to earn it and make us believe that in these training camp practices, and that's what I'm fascinated to see is how do they over the next 2 weeks dial in, and can they win that faith when it's been 2 years of not winning it so far? Can this be the moment they rise up? Because we know Nick has the abilities, physical and athletic abilities, and I think he's a smart guy who turned a corner last year in terms of some of his focus levels. You got to put it all together on the field. It's got to happen right now for this team.
Chris Ballard tends to give a lot of chances to some positions, doesn't he? Like a lot of chances.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, he's a scout at heart, so he lives for the draft and he lives for seeing these guys come together, and so he wants to see some of this come through. And every year, there's a couple of positions that he is taking a huge leap of faith based on his drafted players. Last year, it was offensive line and outside corner, and one of those he kind of fooled everyone, and it worked, offensive line. And he likes to point that out that's an example of how this works. That it can, if you have patience and foresight, it can work. But and so when he takes these bets, they tend to work out more often than you would think. But when they don't work out, they tend to blow up really badly. Think the offensive line 2 years ago or outside cornerback last year. It's often there's a thin margin for error at some of these type of spots. And I think right now, if they don't make the move at free safety, that's what they're faced with, where all it would take is one injury to Julian Blackman or Kenny Moore, who are basically on the field as much as they've ever been last year. One injury to one of those guys, if they don't have a free safety and they lose one of them, I don't know how they cover anybody. So it could work out where, they didn't pay a lot in that position. They came together and the young players stepped up, and that combines with an elite pass rush, and it all comes together. But it's flimsy, and that's why I think there's a ton of upside and ceiling on this team to be explosive and potentially a division champion. There is a lower floor than some other teams because of those secondary issues and the bets that they're taking. And what if 2 of the positions go wrong? The whole bottom could fall out. So it's very interesting to watch right now.
Maybe it's just me. Am I coming from just a pessimistic standpoint to where if I were in his shoes, I would want some assurances more than just rolling the dice and taking a chance and then hoping that you've got availability from somebody that can pick up the slack that you're losing because you didn't go out in the offseason and bring somebody in there as insurance. That's kind of what drives me nuts with him. It just kind of it seems like he has all the time in the world. Maybe he has in year number 8, all the time in the world on some things. And clearly we've seen with this team and in the NFL in general, you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly feel that way. I thought they should have signed some kind of veterans, even if they're depth pieces, to cornerback and safety, so that you have some of that safety net to where, if Juju Brents doesn't get over his injury concerns, you have someone else out there who's played before that can at least keep it from being a disaster. I understand there's a few different complications going on that lead him to not making those moves. One of them is that, if he's going to take bets, if he wants to create a runway for guys like Nick Cross and Jalen Jones, those guys have to play. And sometimes if you sign a veteran, the coaching staff may play that veteran over your young player. We saw that a couple years ago with Brandon Faison playing as much as he did. I don't think that was the front office's intent when they signed him, but he was such a coaching staff favorite, even though he wasn't really playing very well when they were doing that. And so sometimes it's like you don't want to give too many options that can bury a guy. And that's the same thing with, for the conversation with like Quandre Diggs or Justin Simmons, I personally would just go ahead and do it. I would bet on this team. I think they've got that high of upside, and I think those guys are that good. But I understand if you do that, you're basically ending Nick Cross's time here. You're telling him that you don't believe in him and that he doesn't have a role here anymore. And that's a tough thing to do. It's tough when your entire franchise is built on draft and develop, and you're telling these players that wait your turn and do the work behind the scenes, it'll pay off. To not give them that opportunity to let it pay off can undo a lot of the culture that you end up building. And this is stuff Chris Ballard thinks about all the time in team building. So it's certainly open to criticism because sometimes it's like not aggressive enough, and it's not. They have $25 million in cap space right now. There's nothing stopping those adjustments that would give them at least insurance at these positions, if not a lot more upside. But you do understand that he has a certain model, a certain way that they've built this thing out, and especially with Nick Cross, it's been such a journey here to keep him developed behind the scenes and get him acclimated and make sure he's not the youngest player in the NFL anymore. And don't you want to at least see if he can tap into some of those abilities? So it's a little bit more complicated than I think some people give it credit to. The other thing I would add in there too is it's not just the Chris Ballard philosophy; it's a Jim Irsay philosophy, who has never really courted outside free agents. That's just not the way this franchise operates with spending. They like to spend on in-house guys, and so that's why Chris Ballard has been the perfect fit for him as a draft and develop and re-sign your own players type of general manager. But this year is going to be the test of, does that have a high enough ceiling to it? We're going to learn that pretty soon, because the whole idea of drafting Anthony Richardson, signing Jonathan Taylor, hiring Shane Steichen is you're trying to take the leap in the AFC to not just a team that goes 9-8, but a team that has a chance to at some point knock on the door of that Super Bowl. It's a super high bar in the AFC, where the only quarterbacks who get to the AFC title game anymore are basically Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. So how do you break through to that? We're going to learn soon this year, I think, whether this model that Chris Ballard has, does it have that kind of a ceiling or not?
Yeah, it's weird, because what I gather out of that, for the most part, Nate, is the subject of, still having a great deal of patience, whether you're talking about Jim or talking about Chris. But I feel like I've got the finger on the pulse of fans around here, and there is zero patience going on here. And they don't want to hear that stuff anymore.
I get that. I mean, it's certainly like you want to see some of these people evolve on some points too. And so I understand why this past free agency probably felt like, well, Chris Ballard's never going to change. They didn't sign a single veteran starter. They signed two guys really, and Raekwon Davis and Joe Flacco, to be backups. And everything else is kind of, we like our, yesterday when Chris Ballard says a line like, we like our young players. I understand why some fans are like, I've heard that forever, and the ceiling we won one playoff game with Andrew Luck years ago and none since then. So I get that. The thing I would say is I think we have to see them, have a quarterback healthy to see if it can work. And that's why the best thing for the Colts, or the best thing for all of us to get answers on this, would be if Anthony Richardson could have a full season, not even 17 games, but if he can play 14 games and get that excuse out of the water, but also the opportunity to see the upside of it, that's what I think it's, if it doesn't come together this year, but they have that quarterback who has that upside and he's on the field, if it doesn't work then I totally understand people not wanting to buy into that model and they don't want to hear that line anymore. But I will say, I just think that you also have to, I think you have to have a little bit of patience to let them have that opportunity as well, because it has been a very weird few years here. And, not everyone's going to be on board with Chris Ballard's, just general team building philosophy, and you may just be out on it. But I think the model of it was always about, we got to get our quarterback out there healthy, and that's been the conversation with Andrew Luck and now Anthony Richardson, and then a weird weighting of veterans bridging between those two guys. So I think we're getting a lot more answers with that. And I extend that to that whole free safety conversation, which is okay, if you're going to bet on Nick Cross, then I'm willing. I'm not a fan here, so I'm just covering it. I'm willing to see that play out. But if it doesn't work, and you just left Quandre Diggs and Justin Simmons to sit there while you had $25 million, and they missed the playoffs because of that, I think all the criticism in the world will be validated and justified if that's the situation that unfolds. So it's sort of like he's taken that kind of bet, although I don't know if he is, because I don't know, because he's been there so long, I've never sensed that he's been on the hot seat. So
he plays this thing like he's got all the damn time in the world, man. He plays it like he's got all, and evidently through 8 years, because you would rarely find anybody that would make it through. We're talking about results-minded folks. Anybody that would make it through 8 years with the results we have seen. And Nate, in closing here, it's interesting when you brought up the whole run it back mentality. And I fought this with the Pacers in the offseason because they're running it back. They're rebooting. And what I remind people is what the Pacers are doing has shown results. You saw it this year. What the Colts continue to do with that thought in mind, with that process in mind, hasn't shown results. And that's why people bristle at it. That's why people don't want to hear about it. And until it does, that's how the fans will feel.
I think that's fair on the overall with Chris Ballard, and that's why I think it's fair to push him to evolve some of these points. I think with this specific team, this specific offseason, it was more fair to run it back from last year when you consider they were 30 yards from winning the AFC South with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback, and they had 2 plays with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor on the field. And to me, if you're going to be a team in the AFC right now, you have to have something about your offense that sets you just totally different, totally explosive. That's the only way that teams get to the Super Bowl, whether it's the Bengals passing game with Joe Burrow or obviously what the Chiefs have built with Patrick Mahomes. It's what, every team that's got a chance at this, like the Bills and Ravens, have built something in their offense around their quarterback that is so explosive and dynamic. And so the Colts, their model or their hope is that's Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. And so it was about, get Anthony healthy through the shoulder and get Jonathan Taylor out of the weirdness of last year and into a full normal year and tap into that. And you don't have to reinvent everything else if that thing can come together. So I understand it to a point. Like I said, yes, I think they took it a little too far. They could have a few more veterans. They need more depth in the secondary. And I would just go out there and sign one of those star free safeties if they're in the spot they're in where they don't feel sold on what they have at free safety. But I understand the idea, though, that if you introduce that backfield to what you showed last year and all other parts of the team, this is a team that has the potential to win 11 or 12 games and become a team that wins some in the playoffs and starts, this is a team where if this works out a year from now, we should be talking about them in the conversation with the Ravens, Bills, Bengals, and Chiefs of having that chance if that all works out. So I think running it back this specific year made a lot more sense than some other years. The one where I think it was totally fair game, and I wish I had been more critical at the time, was 2022 when they added Matt Ryan, but they didn't add anything else to the offense, and they pretty much asked the 39-year-old quarterback to lift up, a right guard turned left tackle, a center turned right guard, and have no tight ends to play with. That was the model that was an absolute dumpster fire. But I think this year makes a lot more sense because of the way they ended last year and what exactly they're adding from their own roster that was just hurt or unavailable last season.
I'm going to tell you, I hope, Nate, that you're absolutely on target because, frankly, over the past decade of talking about a lot of the same things in terms of not having results that anybody's looking for, but the myriad of avenues and ways this team has found a way to undo things, to lose, to have bad seasons, to bow out. I hope that this is a change playing off of this training camp. Nate, I appreciate you more than you know dropping in today, and we'll keep you in the loop over the course of training camp and once the season officially gets started, okay?
Yep, always good to talk to you. Good to catch up again.
Yeah, Nate Atkins of the Stars on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. There is nobody around that wants this thing finally to get back in place more than me. And before you say, no, you're always Mr. Negative, no, I'm not, because I understand this. You guys out there have been doing this for the better part of 20 years now, and the one true thing I understand, that everybody's better, and especially my position in radio, with numbers and people that care and the excitement level when you have a winner. Losing and criticism around here will last a little bit. But then it's not like you're interested any longer. You're sick and tired of griping about it. Yeah, losing benefits many, and you're listening to one of them right here. This place, the station, the shows, everything. Nate Atkins of the Star on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. 20 years. If I've been taught anything, that is it. Chappell, top of the hour, stuff to give away. That is coming up as well. And the destination tomorrow on our Tavern Tour stop is in Broad Ripple. I explain next.
Killed anyone?
Yeah, but they were all bad.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, turn this up really quick, James. Artist and song. Anybody know what the song is? That right there, ladies and gentlemen, classic English beat and save it for later. In fact, when I went to see English Beat with Chris Hagen, when they were here with Adam Ant, back in March is when it was. And this was the song, this is their signature song that they did not play over at the Mirage, and we presumed it was because some guy in the front row pissed them off, and they decided to X out the most popular song of their category, or catalog, I should say. But Save It for Later, that is a remake of an English Beat 80s classic by, do you recognize the voice, James? Who was singing that?
Not a clue.
Bring it up one more time here. Bring it up.
I have no idea.
Don't call me daughter. No?
That rings no bells.
Jeremy spoken.
Still nothing.
Eddie Vedder? This is Eddie Vedder.
Really?
Yeah. Eddie Vedder kind of played around with this song for a number of years and then decided to record it, and the thing has blown up this summer. It's Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam doing Save It for Later. In case you did not know that. Sounds really good, too. From the 1980s. Nate Atkins from The Star, moments ago, podcast at 1075thefan.com. And Zach Osterman, also of The Star, talked IU football. Kurt Signetti met with the media, Big Ten Media Days, a little bit earlier today. And a lot of things to get us ready for college football right there. Phil Steele's going to join us. That is the official time when college football is underway, when Phil Steele joins this show. That's coming up next week. Mike Chappell in the 5 o'clock hour. Tomorrow's show is at Average Joe's in Broad Ripple. That is a tavern tour stop. Me, Brent Halverson, I know Romy will be there. And we're just looking for you. Now, I also will remind you that rumor has it, both Matt and Matt, our friends from AAA membership, who sponsor the lounge via YouTube Live, the AAA Membership Lounge, where you can watch, listen, and participate right now throughout the course of the show, that my friends Matt and Matt will be there. And last time out, they gave away tickets to Ruoff. I believe this time they will as well. Imagine Dragons is what we're looking for tomorrow to give away while we're there in Broad Ripple. And I also remind you, last time was at Morse Reservoir when both Matts showed up, and we gave away a set of tires where with AAA membership, they come out and they set them up for you wherever you are. So, for example, if I'm parked here in the parking garage and they're setting me up with a set of tires, AAA comes down into the parking garage, and then they change my tires right there. Put on the new ones and take the old ones with them. So I'm not certain that will happen, but it did the last time out. So be ready for it. AAA also a big-time sponsor out at Ruoff. That's their VIP deck, where if you're going to Red Hot Chili Peppers later on tonight, we'll look for you out there with our friends from AAA. And the Red Hot Chili Peppers coming to Ruoff Home Mortgage Music Center. That is later on this evening right there. I mentioned Mike Chappell coming up at the 5 o'clock hour. Tomorrow's show is in Broad Ripple. Cannot wait for that, and what is going to be a very busy weekend, to say the least. Yeah, Dylan Cease with a no-no earlier today against the Nationals. The Padres pitcher gets it done. So good for, few and far between is what you thought about that, right? Few and far between. JMV, I heard you talking to Julian Blackman yesterday. The one thing I'm concerned about, as always, is his health. He did get dinged up at the end of the year. Said, I believe, that Texans game out with a shoulder. Yeah, we brought that up yesterday. And if you missed any of it, the podcast is at 1075thefan.com. Olympics about ready to get underway. Do we reach out to Noah? I think we're going to reach out to Noah doing the basketball once they officially get underway. We'll see where Tyrese Halliburton is as far as getting any minutes whatsoever once that is officially underway. I did find myself watching some hoop last night. I was watching the TBT from Wichita with the Colorado alumni team and the Kansas alumni team last night. There can be moments when, because you love basketball, you watch it and you enjoy it, and then there are other moments when it's really bad basketball. But I found myself watching that a little bit last night, a part of the TBT, which is ongoing. I think Colorado won that last night with the Elam ending knockdown shot over the Kansas team. I was trying to think of the Kansas guys. I think Frank Mason III was maybe the only one that a lot of you would recognize on that Kansas alumni team last night. It's from Pat, JMV, heading down to Dale Hollow. Finally get to listen to the show for the first time since moving to Ohio. Better than Michigan. Miss hearing the show every day. Well, you can do that with a podcast at 1075thefan.com. The podcast is, check that, not the podcast, but the stream. The stream, the app, we have an app. AAA Membership Lounge. Pat, we got to have you daily. I must tell you that we have to have all of you daily. And we're all over a little bit of everything. So make sure you're here. I know this microphone's right in front of my grill here. Look at that. So you were suggesting a little bit earlier that Gwen Stefani and I are the same age, yet she is aged more gracefully than I? Did you say that?
I potentially said that.
I will say, if you look at me right, I think I'm catching up. I think I'm catching a little tan, a little glow going on right there. I think I'm catching up.
Should go tanning. Go to a tanning bed or get a spray tan or something.
Well, you're going to hear this pretty soon. I believe it starts coming up in August, but I have been, for the past month, doing Premier Weight Loss. And this is something Sean Copeland talks about on B105.7. I was running his commercials on the JMV Takeover, and they approached me to do it. And I'd never been one. Like, when I got in my 50s, I thought, all right, I play basketball all the time, and I'd worried about salads and all that stuff when I was in my 20s. And then they called me and said, do you want to try this? And I, it's just at the end of June is when I started it. And I said, oh, all right, we'll give it a try. And I am down 12 now since the end of June. So, and part of it is when I speak to you and I use it, it's got to work. I've got to work it. So I've also modified my diet, which is really weird for me to say. I have modified my diet. Not completely. Well, really, in that first month, yeah, it was pretty complete. But here's the one thing that I found out. I've dropped 12. I feel so good at 54. Now I feel much better than I did a couple of months ago hooping. I do. Which means I'll probably go out there and blow out my knee pretty soon. But what the hell? But it absolutely has worked. That is something you'll hear from me in the next month or two. And we're going to continue down that path. So, yeah, 12. And I never thought about it. Not once. I thought, I'm going to eat whatever I want. And, you know, you're in your 50s. You're just going to hang out and enjoy stuff. I ate all those salads in my 20s. I don't need to eat all these salads. But now I've kind of modified it. And I think a lot of what does motivate you in a different way is to see something work. It's like the level of confidence in general. It's like when you play sports or when you're watching sports. When it works, that builds, obviously, your confidence, and that's kind of where we are. But you'll hear a little bit more about that. And that's where we'll be. Premier Weight Loss. And a shout-out to Thomas and the gang up there. Yeah, down 12. And it really just makes me feel better. It didn't bring my vertical back because I never had a vertical in the first place. But moving around feels a lot better, too. Shout out to those folks up there. And again, you'll hear a little bit more of that coming up in August as we begin that run with them. Quick one, we'll come back. Chappell, top of the hour. Your calls at 239-1070. We can do that before Mike jumps on here. And we have stuff to give away, I should say, in the 5 o'clock hour. Sit tight. A no-no today. Colts practice for the first time today. And a lot more for you and more on the whole betting on yourself phrase that has worn me out. And I gave you reasons why a little bit earlier. We'll recap that coming up next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
JMV.
Bill, I just have one question for you. What color is an orange? Ted, you bonehead. Its color is the same as its name, just like a lemon.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
And I mentioned a lot of you over in Cincinnati, evidently, tonight. Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl. And the Foo Fighters in Cincinnati. Here's what I love, too, because I wonder if there's going to be maybe some meshing going on, but the opening act at Great American Ballpark tonight for the Foo Fighters, the Pretenders. And I've seen the Pretenders before. That's Chrissy Hynde and the Pretenders. That's going to be awesome. And I kind of wonder if maybe maybe some meshing going on, like with middle of the road or back on the chain gang, something like that. The Pretenders open up for the Foo Fighters tonight at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. My friends, that's awesome right there. A lot of you are on your way over there, going southeast bound and down to Cincinnati. Enjoy that show at Great American Ballpark. Now, speaking of Great American Ballpark and the Reds, if you missed the conversation, both Reds and Bengals with Lance McAllister earlier this week, he got a little bit emotional. He did. he got a little bit emotional, and then he kind of wore me out on the analytics of it, and we met in the middle. He's an analytical type of guy, and I for one am not, but I give you a very good reason why, is because I'm not very bright. And I completely understand my limitations. And me lobbing out a bunch of nerdy numbers at you, you're automatically going to go, right. So part of me doing this over all these years, completely understanding your limitations. So I, for the most part, stay out of the world of analytics. And Lance McAllister has that as a home base, and people love it over there. He's really good. That podcast at 1075thefan.com. 239-1070. Our guy J-Law is up first this afternoon. J-Law, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, how are you?
Fantastic. Now, you're not going tonight, correct? To Ruoff?
No, I am going.
Oh, you are?
There.
Well, you better slide by and check us out.
Yeah, well, I think we'll get there about 7:15, 7:30.
Well, I'm going to leave down here at 6, so what the hell time do you think I'm going to get there? About 9?
Yeah, about the same time.
About 9 o'clock. I went to basically the north side of Indy, close to Carmel this morning. It took me stinking forever to get there. There are 0 good ways to go. None.
It took me 45 minutes to get from Carmel, Main Street area, to home this afternoon.
And we're so pissing everybody off who's sitting idle in their rides right now trying to get home from work and not moving wherever they are, because they're going through it right now, too.
But, hey, it's going to be a good show tonight. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, never seen him before, so I'm going to give that a chance. So, yeah.
Same here. Hey, call about the IU football. Long-time season ticket holder, suffering for many years. But the bright spot with Coach Sig so far is he's no nonsense from what I've heard. I have a couple of parents that I know that have kids on the team that, man, everything is, scripted out for practice. There's no nonsense. All the Leo stuff's down. And he means business. I mean, he's a straight shooter from what I've been told.
Yeah. I think everybody digs on the message so far. And I think that's what is necessary. I do. And I love the fact that he kind of talked to some junk about the transfer portal guys who jumped in and didn't give him an opportunity and moved on to wherever they moved on to. I like that. I think that should happen more.
And I think the big difference I think you'll see during the game is the decision-making and game management. I think there are so many errors made in the last several years with Coach Allen. I couldn't decide on a quarterback, the timeouts, et cetera, just – the basic stuff on the sideline is just missing. So, looking forward to it. If nothing else, we have a good time tailgating.
8 home games. I wonder what those early home games are going to look like. Because I've just noticed this, J-Law, in closing with you. I've noticed a lot of buy-in from fans that in the past haven't bought in. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like I do see it. I've noticed it a lot more going into this season than we have. Maybe it's the new and the freshness, but that's kind of what I've seen.
Yeah. Hey, I hope to see you tonight.
You got it, buddy. Thank you, J-Law.
All right, take care.
All right, 239-1070. That's State Fair tickets. We're going to do both sets of tickets next hour. We want to do it right now. What the hell? Let's do some State Fair tickets right now. 239-1070. Well, I'm thinking about it. It's top of mind. 239-1070. Your opportunity to go see the State Fair. Number 9 at 239-1070. Go and get those for free. Got more to give away in the 5 o'clock hour. Chappell's going to be here as well. On the road tomorrow with a must participate from all my friends out there in Broad Ripple at Average Joe's. Explanation forthcoming. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hour number 3. The Busch tickets with Gavin Rossdale to give away before the end of the show. Busy so far and more right now on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, as Weird Al just alluded to in that re-entry. Coming off of surgery a week ago himself, I believe that faulty knee got a little work done around this time last week from CBS 4 and Fox 59. Mike Chappell joins us. How you feeling?
Pretty good. Yeah, about this time last Thursday, the wife was just bringing me home and from surgery. So yeah, it's been a busy, interesting last 2 or 3 weeks. But hey, life goes on.
Did you get drug loopy on the ride home?
Oh yes.
Beautiful.
Well, of course they make you be able to spell your name and do the alphabet before they release you from the hospital. So, but it was just it's funny where teams will say a guy either had a procedure or surgery. I take the approach that they cut your skin at surgery, and it was just a scope to repair a torn meniscus, and I think I told you I was in a wheelchair for 6 days. I could do nothing. So I got what limited mobility I had pretty much back, and I was able to go to Ballard's presser yesterday. I skipped practice today. I'm hoping the doctor clears me tomorrow, and I'm going to drive and head to camp on Saturday. So we all deal with stuff, and I'm dealing with this, and we move on, and hopefully moving forward, there's no more problems of being old and your body breaking down.
Are you able to drive?
I probably could. I think I'm going to wait till I talk to him tomorrow. Is my right knee, so you've got to be able to, have some kind of a strength in your right leg to brake and all that stuff. I think I'm okay, and the wife tells me I'm not, but if I can drive, I'll drive. I'm not an idiot. I won't put anybody and myself in danger, but hopefully by Saturday I can drive.
You want to give some love to the surgeon?
Yeah, I can't remember his first name, but it's Dr. Chalet. One of the next guy that I've worked with at Forte. I've gone from Joseph Murat, who was great, to Tom Cloutwig, who's great, and now to this guy. So we're sort of kind of going down the alphabet of their doctors, and they've got great people. I've done Stephen Ritter and all those guys. So that's Chris Ballard sort of helped me get hooked up with these guys, with my wife and her problems and mine. So I figured if the Colts trust these guys, then I certainly should trust them.
Kevin Julian did mine at Greenwood Orthopedics. Great guy. Yep. They all think, I know a lot of these guys from doing shows with them together with what we used to do on Thursdays, and they all think I'm an idiot. Seriously.
Well, maybe you are. I mean, maybe you are.
There may be some evidence. Yes. They all laugh and we have a good time, but deep down inside they go, my God, this guy's an idiot right here. Holy
it's just because, again, when as you know, when they go in and the doctor comes in before the surgery, one thing that's kind of funny that they do is he gets his Sharpie out and writes on which knee he's going to operate. He put yes on this knee. I thought, let's get the right one fixed, for crying out loud, and let's not take anything else you're not supposed to take out. It's funny, I was supposed to have – I've had this Shaq Leonard disc problem for the last year, and I had surgery for that because that broke down, and I was supposed to have another injection in my disc last Thursday, and that got superseded by the knee. And I told the guy, I said, listen, you got me under. Go ahead and stick that needle in my back. Let's get a 2-for-1 out of it.
Just do everything right here. Why don't
they wouldn't do it. So but I was talking to Rick Venturi, and he's got stuff going. Hey, you just deal with it.
Yeah.
You move on, and we were trying to figure if I would be on PUP or NFI, and as long as I can get up there and do my job, and that's all I want to do. It's again, everybody's got stuff to deal with, and I got stuff to deal with. You do, and you just kind of do it and move on, and you can't dwell on it because you go crazy.
I can't wait to get to camp so I can see Rick. I've got to have that Rick Venturi stuff going on.
It's funny because I was talking. This was my 41st year of covering these guys.
Yeah.
And he said, I got you by 3. Because he came, obviously, he was part of the Baltimore move. But I tell you, we sit and talk and we laugh, and he tells me, I had this cardiac thing and I have this thing. And it's kind of like when Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw were comparing shark bites and things in Jaws. I pull up your shirt, and this is where she broke my heart.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we are, but it's a good time.
That's a hell of a reference right there. That's well done out of Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, but I hope you're feeling better and can't wait to see you up there as well in Westfield whenever I'm up there. Here's a quote from Shane Steichen. Mike, earlier today, people asked this too. Hey, are you going to limit the run game? And I kind of think like, shoot, are you going to limit Steph Curry from shooting 3-pointers? Well, that's one of Anthony's strengths. We're not going to get away from that. End of quote right there. So did we see a lobbing of the Steph Curry comparison? I'm sure a lot of people will make with that.
Now, the only difference is Steph Curry doesn't get whacked every time he shoots a 3-pointer like Richardson might. So, but his point is, and again, we've talked about this is why they drafted Anthony Richardson, because he's a thrower, he's a runner, he can get to the edge, and he just creates like I wrote about that today. It's Lamar Jackson, it's Jalen Hurts, it's Josh Allen, it's what the Cam Newton and Justin Fields. He just creates problems, and it will be up to the team to better prepare Richardson to limit the risk. But this is who he is. It's going to be on him to know when a play is over. We talked about this with Andrew Luck, although Andrew Luck wasn't built the same as far as how he ran in his game. But, there's going to be times – I looked at that Richardson played – he had 2 games last year where he start to finish. He had 10 carries each game. So is that what we look at? Maybe. That may be a bit high, but if he can protect himself and still do damage, and we all point to the Harold Landry hit that put him out last year. I just think it was one of those fluky plays where they fell wrong. The concussion, that was on Richardson, and run through the tape, and then you're fine. So I understand the injury concerns, but that's why you drafted a guy. If you wanted a pocket guy, then draft one. But this guy is the package, and they really, really believe that pairing him with Jonathan Taylor is really going to put fear in defensive coordinators. And we talked to Chris Ballard Wednesday, and I asked him, somebody asked him about what kind of a season he expects for Taylor, and he said a big year. Whatever big means. I mean, that's relative, but this guy isn't that far removed from 1,800 yards and 20-some touchdowns. And he and Richardson and Taylor played. They were on the field for 2 plays last year. 2. The Week 5 game is when Taylor made his first appearance, and that was Richardson's last game. So we don't have any idea really what these guys can do. We think we do. So it's all about what they think can be done, and they will try to limit. I don't know if limit's the right way, but they'll try to prepare Richardson as best they can. Then he's going to play, and then it'll be on him to try to avoid as many big hits as he can.
I've said this, that all right, most of that limit, much like when you brought up Andrew Luck, needs to be in the head of Richardson. Much like it was also not in the head of Luck, because oftentimes, it's not like the offensive line was anything great, we know that, but Andrew Luck put himself in so many of those situations. And, Mike, over those early years with Andrew Luck, that was his signature, much like this is his signature. You just have to be smart about how you play it. And that was something that Luck wasn't and didn't, and we saw what happened, and something that just beyond the play calling and, letting the quarterback run with Shane Steichen in mind, this is something that has to have full participation in the decision-making dome of Anthony Richardson.
Right, because I think, again, they didn't incorporate that many significant runs with Luck. But they will with Richardson. They just will. Again, it's going to be like the Jacksons and the Hurts and all those guys.
No, he was extending the play. Remember how cool it was when he extended the play? That was his signature. The extension of the play. That was also getting your ass whipped at the end of the extension of that play.
And there will be a time when you say enough's enough. The one where he had the lacerated spleen or kidney, whatever it was, against Denver, that was a football play. He's down inside the 5-yard line. You're trying to score, and two guys just drill you. And those are going to happen. But you have to pick your spots. And I think he will. But until we see him play 15, 16 games, and over a couple of years, I'm not saying 200 straight games like Manning did or whatever it was, because they're totally different quarterbacks, and they're totally. And Manning had some great offensive lines, so this is totally different. But for anyone who thought they were going to change Anthony Richardson, I mean, are you crazy? Last year was so unfortunate, but again, this is what they saw in college. And this is what that's why they drafted him. So, yes, you're going to keep your fingers crossed, because I see, we see collisions out there every game where you think, how did he get up? And they do. And again, Richardson just fell wrong on that shoulder. And I can remember a half a dozen plays later in the season where I saw quarterbacks get hit the same way, and they pop right up. So, but this is who he is, and if he can stay on the field, you really like what this offense can do.
So Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59. I don't think this has been on many radars, but I will ask you this, and I asked him the same thing back during minicamp, and that is Matt Gay came in as a place kicker, highest paid, and had a number of misses. Now, we do remember a number of those misses were 50-plus, but that was also a reason why they brought him in. He told me he had a disappointing season for himself. How did the Colts feel about it?
I think they're confident. Again, I think he had 8 misses, most in his career, and 5 of them were 50-yarders, 50-yard plus. But before he came here, the reason they signed him, he was like a 92% kicker. So that in that regard, it was an off season, but at the same time, he beat the Ravens. What was it, 4 50-yarders? I mean, that was crazy. He just needs to get to where from 40, 42, 44 yards in, he's 95%, whatever. And then if you're 8 for 13 or whatever he was from 50, that's a pretty good season. It's a lot goes into it, but as off as that season probably was for him, he still delivered some big kicks. But I would hope any kicker of his level and who's making that kind of money would be disappointed, because you want better. When Adam Vinatieri was in his prime, he was as good as it got. Now, he would miss an occasional field goal, but boy, when you needed it, he knocked it down. And they just need to have, Matt Gay approach that 90% and still be that threat from deep, because when you got a guy that you can kick from 50, 55, then you're not forcing 3rd and 6 on the edge of his range. You just know that if you give him a chance, he's going to give you 85% chance of getting points. So, yeah, he needs to be better, and he knows it, and I don't think there's a big concern from the team. They signed a kicker, but they always send kickers in training camp, and because you don't want to wear out your veteran guys. So I think of any of their list of concerns, if there's 10 of them, he's probably number 11. I just don't think you worry too much about him.
What's the strongest position?
Defensive line, and then offensive line. I like the offensive line. I want to see who the backup tackles are, Blake Freeland and who. You want to see if Braden Smith can come back. And, he and Bernard Reinman are one of the top tackle tandems in the league. But Braden missed a ton of games last year with that knee, which he had operated on. And defensive line, holy smokes, they got players. I wish they had the alpha pass rusher, and maybe Latu will be that. They've done it by committee with like 4 or 5 guys, had 8 sacks last year, which is great. But there were times that the pass rush wasn't good enough, and you don't want to see it go away like it did some last year. But 51 sacks was an Indy record. I think they'll have to cut some pretty good players. Certainly on the defensive line, you'll keep, 9. I don't know if you keep 10 or not. So that's a good problem to have. I think those two, and it's funny how Ballard mentioned again, he said, that'll be on my tombstone. Offensive line, defensive line, you got to be good up front. And if this offensive line can approach the way they played last year with injuries, again, with Braden Smith missing time, I think with the people they've got, with Richardson and Taylor and Pittman and the receivers, this could be a pretty good offense.
So Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59 on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Enough at tight end, and it's still a major mystery because I think after his rookie season, people thought that he was really going to escalate into being, a playmaking option offensively for this Colts team, and then he missed the entirety of the year last year. What about Jelani Woods? What's the level of expectation? And without that, what's kind of left? I know they like Will Mallory, and you got Ogletree still a part of it, but how are they going to find the production that is necessary there if he, after missing last season, isn't the guy that they thought he might become after year number 1?
Yeah, I think they really want Jelani Woods to be that guy. God, he's like 6'6", 6'7", and whatever, 250, and he showed us what he can do stretching the field. And again, if everything else is working with the guys on the outside and the run game, the middle of the field should be really vulnerable to these tight ends. But you're right, they've got 5 or 6, maybe 7 guys at the position, and how many do you keep? Do you keep 4 or 5? 5 seems a lot. It just seems like a lot. But they all do something pretty good, but no one does everything pretty good. Mo Ali Cox, he's their best inline blocker, and he'll give you, X number of catches and 2 or 3 touchdowns, and he always makes plays, but we've seen his ceiling. We've not even approached Jelani Woods' ceiling, Drew Ogletree, of course, Will Mallory going into the second year, Kylan Granson. It's going to be an interesting group. You wish again you had that guy, whether they would have been in a position to sign Bowers. Who knows what they would have done. But yeah, it's a deep group and it's an uncertain group, and you'd always like to have more certainty of the pecking order. But that's what camp's for. But if Jelani Woods doesn't emerge or whatever, then I think it just throws everything up in the air. And because again, I just don't think you want, and I don't mean to be a knock on Mo, but you just don't want Mo Ali Cox to be one of your top couple of tight ends, certainly in the pass game. You want more than that. So there's a lot riding on Jelani Woods, and he's shown us some stuff, but when you miss an entire year with hamstrings, you just kind of hold your breath and hope that doesn't revisit him. I hope it doesn't, because he's got a ton of talent.
Hey, Mike, so we know this for certain that Colts owner Jim Irsay, the hard target Saturday, August the 3rd over in Canton with Dwight Freeney. We know that. What about any sort of sightings at camp prior to it? What are you thinking?
Well, good question. The thing is, that's about the time he makes an appearance at camp, that first or second week, which coincides. So we'll see. Freeney's still very excited that Irsay is going to be in Canton.
Is there still might there be some question where he won't be?
That's a good question. We've not heard from Jim. Okay. I've reached out to him, haven't heard back from him yet. I want to talk to him about Freeney, but I know how important that is to him. I mean, it is. This is a third player that of all the people in their lives, in their football lives, they said Jim Irsay is who I want there beside me for the biggest moment of my football life. With Edgerrin and with Marvin, it's just really it speaks volumes. So if he can be there, he'll be there. If he can't, it certainly you wonder. So, but hopefully we'll see Jim Irsay in Canton, and it'll quiet any concerns that people have.
So I guess, is there a point in time where, you got to know, right? And it's a week from Saturday.
Yeah. I guess. I mean, yeah, because you need somebody out there to present Dwight. I wouldn't think that they would all of a sudden let one of the daughters stand in. So yeah, you need to know, and I would think that the fact that they haven't said, well, he can't make it. I think the intention is that he'll be there, and it's not super stressful as far as physically. I mean, you're just on stage and you stand up there with Dwight, and then you sit down, and so I hope he's there. But again, we've not seen him for a while. I haven't talked to him for probably a month. But it's one of those until you see him out there and he looks fine and he's out there active, then there's always that little nugget of doubt that'll be cleared up very quickly because Canton is a week from Saturday.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, and then obviously you get that visit with Greg Rakestraw and Rick Venturi in the booth, and that would probably answer some questions whether or not that we get to see that annual event coming up in the preseason.
Right. Just curious and concerned because everybody hopes the best for the owner.
Yeah. So it is a week. That is a week from Saturday coming up here. Wow. Pretty incredible.
I'm looking forward to my wife and I are going for 3 days in Canton. Of course, we got to stay in Akron because you can't get a room in Canton. The Hall of Fame, I'm one of the selectors, and they make rooms available to us that we could not for free, but the 3 hotels in Canton, I think they were Marriott properties, and they were all like $550 a night. I said no, thank you. So we're staying in Akron and make the short drive to Canton, but it'll be a good time.
Who is the best player of these players going in a week from Saturday? Freeney, Devin Hester, Andre Johnson, Julius Peppers, Patrick Willis. And I don't know, you probably remember, I do too, Randy Gradishar. His time in Denver is going in as a senior rep. Who's the best of that group?
Boy, I tell you, here we go. I'm a Freeney guy, but Julius Peppers was a freaking beast. He was just he's got the size and the stats. He was the first overall pick that year, I believe it was. So I'd say Peppers and then Freeney just because I don't want Dwight to hit me next week when I see him.
Yeah.
But and again we can talk about it later. But daggone it, we need to get Reggie in because he deserves it. He's waited, and I'm still rankled that Andre Johnson was picked ahead of him. It just pisses me off. It is what it is.
It's Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59 on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So I talked to Mike DiRocco of ESPN.com earlier this week, and I'd noticed on the depth chart of the Jags where they brought in the offseason a free agent, Devin Duvernay, who'd spent his early years out of Texas as a wide receiver in Baltimore and a special teamer as well. And it just occurred to me to ask, was the reason why they brought him in because the change in kickoff rules? And he said yes. So Josh Downs, is that etched in stone in your opinion? And how are the Colts, from what you have heard, working on getting ready for what is going to be, early on, going to be a very complicated change in kickoff rules?
Yeah, I don't know yet. We're going to talk to coordinators, I think, over the weekend. And it'll be great to hear what they believe. I think Anthony Gould, the draft pick, what was he? What round was he? 5th round?
Yeah.
5th round. I think he's a possibility. And I think the teams that can adapt the quickest to these massive changes will be the ones that really benefit. And it's just going to be that guy that can. It seems like if you break that first tackle, that first line, that you got a whole field to run through. And so I really think if you can find that guy that can make the short cuts and accelerate, you can turn. All of a sudden, you're going to see kick returns. I mean, long ones, if not touchdowns. So, and it's then you got to have guys who can tackle in short spaces. Again with the DBs and the linebackers. But very curious how they're going to do it. And again, Chris Ballard just kind of made it sound, they've done their homework. They've talked to coaches and other people who have been involved with this type of format.
Have they talked to XFL coaches? Is that where they? I guess you would have to, right?
I'm sure they've talked to all those guys.
Yeah.
And because when we talked to coordinator during OTAs in the off season, he really said we haven't got the specific rules. He really couldn't discuss it because they hadn't been given all the details in the specifics of it. So I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing what they're doing. But that kick returner, again, he can turn a game. You know, kickoffs had gotten to be just a time to go take a leak or go get you another beer.
Yeah.
So it'll be really curious how quickly they could adapt and magnify the importance of that part of the game.
Penalty flags will be flying all over the place.
No question. And that's why the preseason games, as much as people hate them, this will be a great chance to try that and see what you've got and see where you're at. And the scrimmages we're going to have with Arizona and Cincinnati is the time to do that. But at least everybody's in the same boat. And the teams that are better, that have done the better job of, you know, turning over every rock and talking to everybody possible. And, you know, the more information you get on something you really don't know about, the better you're going to be. And I think these guys will, from a strategic standpoint, they'll be as prepared as possible. But again, until you get out there and you do it, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Hey, Mike, in closing here, Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Maybe something was said from Shane today. Maybe Ballard said it yesterday. Maybe I missed it, which is probably the case. But how many snaps, how much playing time is Anthony Richardson going to get in the preseason?
Yeah, he was asked that, or maybe Kevin Bowen asked him. Somebody did. And, yeah, he's going to play. He said those guys will play, meaning the starters. Boy, I would, you know, the fact that they're going to have two practices against Arizona, those will be of more value than a game. The Bengals one game or one practice, and then it's a good question. Maybe they play more in that opener because then you do have the scrimmages, you know, play more against Denver. I don't know. But and this drives Rick Venturi crazy too, about protecting players in practice and preseason games so they're ready for September. And I understand what he says, but to see a guy perhaps go down against Denver, you know, August 11th, instead of holding him and preparing him for the season, it's a tough balance. But more and more teams are erring on the side of, I want my guys ready September 8th. And they'll let the preseason, the training camp practices and the scrimmages take care of the heavy lifting. But he said, no, they're going to play. So whatever that means as far as snaps, you know, it's normally a couple of series. You know, I wouldn't expose Jonathan Taylor to a heck of a lot because he's that important to you. So it'll be interesting, but they're apparently going to play some, whatever some means.
So Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59 on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Glad you're getting back at it. Can't wait to see you up in Westfield whenever we get up there. I think I'm only up there maybe a couple of times, but
well, there's only 12 practices, 11 after today, so you know it's going to go by so quickly. So when you're up there, give me a heads up, and we'll swing by and talk to you.
You got it, buddy. Thanks, Mike.
Later.
It's a Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59, a GQ story. GQ Sports story, I should say. I don't even, what is that? I shouldn't be asking. Well, GQ Sports is GQ Magazine Sports. Hell, I didn't know they did it. Quick quote upon return from Pacer guard Tyrese Halliburton. Get to that. Give you something to win coming up before the end of the show. Sit tight. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Ride with JMV.
He's my best friend. He's my pal. He's my homeboy, my rotten soldier. He's my sweet cheese, my good time boy.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Mike Chappell, Nate Atkins, Zach Osterman. Podcasts each 107.5thefan.com. AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live. Going to the AAA deck later on tonight at Ruoff to see Red Hot Chili Peppers. Matt and Matt should join us tomorrow. We're in Broad Ripple for a tavern tour stop at Average Joe's. So we'll have some Imagine Dragons tickets to give away tomorrow when my friends Matt and Matt join us again. Average Joe's in Broad Ripple coming up tomorrow. And hopefully I'll see you up at Ruoff in just a little bit for my first time to see Anthony Kiedis Flea and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, I know I've waited a long time. Never had a Lollapalooza or anything like that. Can't remember the last time they were here. I thought maybe the last time they were here, they performed at Cambridge Fieldhouse. I could be wrong. But Red Hot Chili Peppers tonight. And this is what I love about music. And really, this is what I love about my age group, Generation X. Because you're going to have some Generation Xers that go from Red Hot Chili Peppers tonight to Cambridge Fieldhouse tomorrow night to see Barry Manilow. Some in my demographic, Generation Xers may do that. Just so you know. But tonight should be fun, and I will be looking for everybody once again. That is at Ruoff Home Mortgage Music Center for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I don't know who opens up for them tonight. James, can you look that up? Who opens? I mentioned Foo Fighters over in Cincinnati tonight. A lot of friends of mine, a lot of people that listen to the show are on your way over there. Pretenders open up for the Foo Fighters. That'll be awesome in Cincinnati coming up a little bit later on. So if you're on your way over there, have a great time. JMV, speaking of Cincinnati, you had Lance McAllister on earlier this week. What do you think about this team selling off their players? I don't know how many will be sold off, but there's really no reason, right, to buy anything and try to make a run. I think Lance mentioned, I don't know where they are in the wild card right now. Early this week, they were 4 games back in the wild card. But they've really given you no indication that they could be in anything for a long haul. As much as I would like to see it, as much as I want to see it, I desire to see it. But I did see there was an idea that the Yankees had interest in Jonathan India and I think Lucas Sims. And I'd be quite all right if they got rid of one of those guys. But that's probably going to be their level of participation, I would guess. That is selling off some goods with the upcoming baseball deadline. Hello, James.
Well, it looks like on this tour they have a kind of rotating group
opening
of
acts.
Openers. It looks like tonight, and I am going to mispronounce this.
Cool.
Otoboki Beaver.
The hell's that?
It is a Japanese punk rock band.
Can we look? Can you look that up if you don't mind? Now, wait, before you do that, who else is opened up for them on this tour?
On this tour,
anybody
we've got
else I would know?
Beck opened for them.
See, why not Beck? Why can't we have Beck? I saw Beck open up for you too at Lucas Oil Stadium. That was awesome.
We have Iggy Pop, The Strokes.
Why can't have Iggy Pop? Wait a minute.
Ice Cube.
The hell are we getting screwed about? What?
The Roots.
The Roots.
Yeah.
The Strokes. Iggy Pop. Ice Cube, Beck, and we're getting what again? What the hell we're getting tonight?
Otoboki. I'm mispronouncing this. Otoboki Beaver. Otoboki Beaver.
Maybe because I don't know, and I'm talking junk about something I don't know about. Maybe that's it. See if you can find a little something from that band that's going to play there tonight. The hell's going on here? I thought Beck was great. Well, they opened up for you too. I mean, hell, that was years ago. I wonder how badly James mispronounced that band. Japanese punk, you say?
Would you like to hear some of it?
I would like to hear some of it. Very quickly, please indulge me. Tonight's opening act, I'm not going to be able to pronounce the name. This is Japanese punk you'll hear before the Red Hot Chili Peppers tonight at Ruoff. I love it. Let's do it. Wait a minute. That sounds a hell of a lot better than Beck or Ice Cube or Iggy Pop. I've never seen Iggy Pop. Why not Iggy Pop? That has to be for a special event. Iggy Pop just doesn't show up and open up on the road for them, right? That has to be a special event.
He did a couple dates, it looks like. He did June 21st, June 26th, July 11th, and July 14th.
So that's probably more than just a festival or some sort of event.
That
right
was last year.
Last year.
Last
Okay.
year of the tour.
I could add Iggy Pop. Instead, I'm going to add the Japanese punk rock group right there. JMV, I hear Anthony is also running front on occasion, like 1 out of 4 shows. Huh. Explain to that, Michael, a little bit more. I don't know what you mean by that. Running front on occasion. Remember, you got to explain things to me thoroughly because I am not the brightest bulb. JMV, I remember Red Hot Chili Peppers playing at Assembly Hall around 2000. Great show, but they were outshined by a little band named Foo Fighters. And the Foo Fighters in 2000 opened up for Red Hot Chili Peppers at Assembly Hall. I'm jealous. I've seen Red Hot Chili Peppers 3 times and always a great show. First time I saw them, Foo Fighters opened up. That was at the then Deer Creek Music Center. JMV, did you see this? ESPN is going to launch an NFL Red Zone spinoff for NBA games as a part of their new media rights deals. That begins in 25 and 26. Yeah, that will have some impact. That will have some impact because the attention spans on most, especially with the younger generation, is so minimized, so incredibly small now that will be perfect. Let's skip around and see a close game. So what, is it like when a game gets within 5 points one way or the other, do they check in? But again, an NFL Red Zone type of spinoff for the NBA, believe me, I hate the fact that TNT is not involved. And I hope that somehow, some way, you can get inside the NBA with Amazon with that group. Although I think Ernie Johnson's already been pretty ironclad about not wanting to be a part of anything else and not leaving. And Barkley has said previously that he would retire. But I don't mind these ideas. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I will say this. Like if you watch Fox, for example, Fox is always sniffing the rear end of ESPN, and then sometimes I don't know why you'd want to sniff that rear end in the first place because it's not a great scent, if you know what I mean. But it's always like ESPN does something, and then Fox counters with a very unoriginal idea that they got from ESPN. You see that across the board. But with this, I don't really mind this. I think that would help expand the product. I'm always going to watch, like the Pacer games, I'll watch from start to finish. But if you can peek in on some, now how much is it going to cost us? Which is going to be more and more, just get ready. I mentioned this from GQ Sports, an article, and in this case, a comment from Tyrese Halliburton of the Pacers. Are you ready? Quote, all I keep seeing is who's going to win the East? Boston, Milwaukee, New York, or Philly? It's like what we're doing not being included. But again, that respect comes with winning. So if we want to gain that respect, we just got to keep having success as a team. And it's coming. He is 100% right. And that's why there was a time when I used to whine and cry like a little babbling baby. Oh, look at all this attention everybody else is getting, and we here aren't. We're so getting screwed over. And I'd whine and cry, And somebody really should have just beat the absolute hell out of me at the time, but nobody did. But I whined and cried about that. And then I came to the realization, you know what matters? They will find you and they will cover you if you're successful. And that is indeed what it's all about. Now think about all those years with Peyton Manning. Yeah, they found the Colts then. Now, still, you're going to get the New York stuff, and Mike Greenberg is going to be 95% of a 2-hour show when he shows up, all about the Jets. But you get that hype, that notoriety. You get all of that when not just having success in a fleeting moment, but when you have sustained success. Tyrese Halliburton, absolutely right with that quote. Quick break, we'll come back, close it up. Bush tickets before the end of the show. Maybe a call or two at 239-1070. AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live. And on the road tomorrow, location, I'll tell you about it coming up next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
With JMV.
You just got your asses whipped by a bunch of damn nerds.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Oh, yeah, that was me, wasn't it? That's me, too? Who just sent that? Yep. All right, 239-1070. Bush is coming to Indy. Well, we've been giving away Bush tickets all week long. That's Gavin Rossdale and Bush. Everwise Amphitheater, White River State Park, which is an awesome venue. If you've never been there, there is such a remarkable difference between when that thing first opened up. I mean, hell, it used to be just like a field with a temporary stage, and hey, we're going to get this band in here, and you sat out in the grass. And now it is a spectacular venue. That is coming up August the 4th, so a week from Sunday at Everwise Amphitheater, White River State Park. And Bush tickets for you. Number 9 at 239-1070. It used to be just kind of a field. Well, I mean, Ruoff used to be a farm field. I remember driving up there in the early stages of when it was Deer Creek opening up, and you would get off at the exit up there, and the only thing that there would be outside of farm homes and crops and such and fields was, remember there was that little strip mall to your right when you got off the exit up there, and it had like an Amish furniture place in it. That was it. And obviously now it is incredibly different than it was. But, yeah, downtown, Everwise, you will love that. Number 9 at 239-1070. We'll get those tickets. We'll have more for you coming up on tomorrow's show because we're live tomorrow. In fact, in Broad Ripple at Average Joe's, this is a Tavern Tour Stop. Underway at 3 o'clock. Brent Halverson is back. I don't think we've seen Brent in a while because he had a couple of vacations he's been on, but he is back with Heaven Hill Distillery, and our Tavern Tour tomorrow is in Broad Ripple at Average Joe's. I believe both Gina and Lindsay from Channel 13 will join us per usual in the summertime coming up tomorrow as well. And we'll see about Hagen and others. I know that some are probably working from up at Grant Park now that camp is officially underway, but it's going to be a blast in Broad Ripple tomorrow. Hopefully we shall see you there. Again, beginning at 3 with a loaded show for you coming up tomorrow. We're going to get a Tennessee Titans angle. You kind of think of the Colts as a bit of a wild card. You really don't know what you're going to get, like the Forrest Gump box of chocolates, and Tennessee is right in that category. Like you have the expectations because you've actually seen it recently, even with the gag job of the Jacksonville Jaguars a year ago that bounced them out of the postseason. Even with that, you've seen it before from them. You've seen it before from Trevor Lawrence. You saw it a year ago with Houston. But, I mean, you look at the Colts, whiffed on it a year ago in the final regular season weekend against Houston. And then Tennessee, new coach, a whole new obviously new guy, second-year guidance and a new coach, and trying to find out what Will Levis might be down there and surrounding him with some veteran presence. They were the team that went out. We're talking about the Colts at safety. This is not the same position, not the same type of safety. But 2 weeks ago, they were the team that went out and secured somebody in the secondary, a safety, and Jamal Adams. They went out and secured Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, who had a return and a nice season in Jacksonville a year ago, found more money in Nashville within their own division, but they're going out and trying to surround their quarterback with more of a veteran presence all the way around. We'll get that angle for you from Nashville coming up on tomorrow's show. I think Mike Wells from ESPN Radio, # Ask Pat, Pat Sullivan, Sullivan Hardware and Garden is also on the show coming up tomorrow. Missed it a week ago, and Pat is back. And again, we're in Broad Ripple. Average Joe's in Broad Ripple. That is coming up tomorrow. 3 until 6, Heaven Hill Distillery and a tavern tour stop. It should be an absolute blast. James, great job out of you. Thank you very much today. As always, thank you all for listening. Couldn't do it without you. We've got to have you each and every day for a full 3 hours. Make sure you add that to your regimen every single day. Nate Atkins, Zach Osterman, both of the Star, and include Mike Chappell of CBS 4 and Fox 59. Podcast, 1075thefan.com. Julian Blackman from yesterday. Don't miss it. Check it out if you missed any of it. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Hopefully I see you at Ruoff if I get up there at about 10 o'clock tonight. See ya.